I don't think Aaron Glenn was actually asleep, and I think he was just looking at his phone. I wish he did fall asleep. I wish he fell asleep during the games. Maybe the Jets would have a shot at actually winning. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Johnny Montalbano, and this is another edition of Moving the Goalpost. You can follow us across social media at MTGPETB. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network across social media at ETB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart and Johnny at Montalbano NY. And you can follow the Empty the Bench Network across social media at ETB Network. You can watch all Empty the Bench shows on YouTube.com/ETB Network, and you can listen to this show wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure to like and subscribe. All right, so it's early March. March Madness hasn't quite started yet, although college basketball is really heating up. But I guess the big news today is Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is going to be released by the Cardinals. Interesting story. This story in and of itself is not really surprising. We all kind of knew that this was probably going to happen. But I think the more interesting question is, where do we go? Where does Kyler Murray go from here? And what do the Cardinals do from here? I mean, look, the Cardinals will be fine. They were fine most of this year without Kyler Murray. The more interesting question is, where does Kyler Murray go? And, this, not to make everything about the Jets, but it kind of, raises an eyebrow for most Jet fans.
Well, it does, because it's really the first team. One of the first teams you think about is the Jets, because I think Kyler Murray has shown that he can still play in this league and he could still be a starter for some teams. I think he could. He has a role on some rosters. Now, does he have a role on a winning team? That's kind of iffy. But on a winning team, he could be a capable backup. And on a team that's, I think, a perfect fit is the Jets, because you'd be paying him minimum money because the Cardinals released him. They already owe him about $37 million guaranteed for 2026. And so he probably won't get that much. I mean, if you think about it, it's almost like what happened with Russell Wilson, where when the Broncos cut him and he got a minimum deal pretty much with the Steelers. So it does make sense for the Jets. And I know Jet fans may not fall in love with this, but it makes a lot of sense for the Jets side of things, because they need a bridge guy for this year. I don't think that – I mean, there's not many quarterbacks that we know of outside of Fernando Mendoza and Ty Simpson in this year's draft. But all the talk is about, when it comes to the quarterback position, is 2027. So could you get Kyler Murray on a very similar deal that you got with Russell Wilson when he went to the Steelers? I think that's absolutely in play. So a team that is not really in it, you would think, for next year, like the Jets, could be in play. The Browns, maybe, but I mean, the Browns have Shedeur Sanders already. So it's a little bit different in that regard. But what are the other teams you could look at? Like maybe the Miami Dolphins, but the Dolphins, we're hearing about them possibly. It seems more likely that they're going to go down the Malik Willis route in there. So those are the teams you're really looking at. I think Kyler right now, unless you want to sit him behind a veteran, but he doesn't really need that, because Kyler has shown that he can play. I mean, his numbers weren't the worst in the world.
Right.
His biggest issue really has been his size. That's always been the thing with him since the day he entered this league, which was like 6-7 years ago, which is actually quite crazy. But
yeah,
I
remember. I'm old enough to remember when he played at Oklahoma and people were talking about how he's going to play baseball.
I remember the big debate when he came out of the draft, or was going into the NFL draft, I should say, was he going to go in and maybe come back out, or should he go to the draft? Should he go for football, or should he go for baseball? I remember that debate quite well. I mean, it was being discussed for days upon days. So, I mean, I think the NFL worked out well. I mean, was he the best in the world? No. Was he the worst in the world? No. He was kind of in between. Of course, though, when you're taken as far up as he was with the Cardinals, And when he got paid all that money, he was expected to be in the top tier, and he was not in the top tier. By the way, the other reason why the Cardinals did release him or will release him, by barring any crazy trade between now and the new league year, which will start on Wednesday the 11th. So as this show comes out less than a week away, is that he was another $19.5 million would have triggered on March 15th for 2027. And that was when Adam Schefter, I believe, was the one who reported this back during the season, that this was a decision the Cardinals would have to make because of that option for nearly $20 million being triggered in the middle of March. That's when it ultimately felt like the Cardinals were going to go in another direction. Now, Kyler's also been hurt too. That's another thing too. He's had injuries as well. But yeah, so from a Kyler perspective, I think teams like the Jets are certainly possible. I don't think he's going to go to a team that has a guy already in place to be a backup. I think he has the potential to be a bridge guy for a team that's not expected to do much in 2026, like the Jets, like the Dolphins. Yeah. I'm just trying to think a couple more off the top of my head here.
The Jets, the Dolphins, I mean, even the Browns, you could argue, because we don't know how many games Shedeur Sanders is going to start. You never really know. But mainly the Jets and the Dolphins are the main two teams I can think of. How about the Vikings?
Vikings are another one. Yes, that is a good.
I mean, unless they're going all in on the J.J. McCarthy hype train, which they probably shouldn't, given how he played this past season.
Well, that's an interesting thing that's an interesting thing you bring up with the Vikings, because and I know we'll talk about this a lot more in the offseason, but now that they have a new GM in place, usually new GMs want their own guys. And I think if they had still the same GM administration that drafted J.J. McCarthy, I don't think they would make this move. But now that you have a new guy in there, it's certainly a possibility, because you still have Justin Jefferson. Kevin O'Connell's still a very, very good head coach. And that is a division that is, you can make the case all four of those teams can compete in that division. So Kyler Murray could give them a few more wins if he's healthy, because he by accident would be better than what McCarthy had given you. And with the new administration, I don't think the old administration would have done that, because they wanted to justify the fact that they drafted him, and not only drafted him, but they traded one pick up to get him.
Right. Not only did they – no, you're absolutely right. And that is just never a good move when teams make decisions to justify their previous decisions, when the whole point of making that decision is to make your team better. And just making a decision to justify your previous decision, if that makes your team worse, well, that defeats the whole purpose of making the decision in the first place. No, it's always a bad move when teams do that to justify their old decisions. But the Vikings, they don't have a new regime. So they're Rob Brzezinski, who is I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. That's his fault for having such a hard name to pronounce. But BRZEZ. So I don't know if I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
But let's just say Rob Brzezinski, who was the executive vice president of football operations and is now the interim GM. So I assume being the executive vice president of football operations is the guy overseeing the old GM. And I don't know how much of those decisions came from him or if they came from the old GM. I don't know. But it's not a new regime that's in place. So it is certainly possible that the Vikings are going to end up sticking with the same decisions that they've made in the past. However, it certainly is, because there might not be a new regime, at least not yet. They haven't hired a new GM yet. But it is also possible that after J.J. McCarthy's season last year, they might look at that and say, yeah, we're going to need a new quarterback. Maybe we should take a chance with Kyler Murray. That, I think, could happen.
Yeah, that's fair. And they still won 9 games last year, even with crappy quarterback play. And, with games that when McCarthy was out, they were going to Carson Wentz and Max Brosmer. So by accident, Kyler Murray could give you another win or two in that regard. The other wild card with all that when it comes to the Vikings is there's been speculation.
I can't believe they won 9 games. How did that happen?
Well, that defense was still very, very good. And I mean, you still have some players on that offense, obviously highlighted by Justin Jefferson. Adam Schefter on his podcast said also this week that they something about Aaron Rodgers being a possibility with the Vikings, that he really is looking to going there, almost going the Brett Favre route in that regard too. So that's another play you got to look at.
I think we'll stay with the Steelers another year now that Mike McCarthy's the head coach. I have a feeling. I
agree with you. It would make the most sense too if he does want to play one more year. And my gut tells me I think he does want to go one more year. I mean, he still had a very good season last year, so I think he shows that he can still play, and maybe with a new head coach, a familiar one at that, and with still some talent there in Pittsburgh, he can still ride it one more year. I think that certainly is in play. But yeah, Kyler now opens up the free agent market, and now we see. But like I said though, does he have a fit really on a playoff team? I don't really see it right now.
No, because
every playoff teams have a quarterback in place.
Every playoff team has a good enough quarterback. Like I said, the only team that I think could be a playoff team that if you were to just fill him in could be a playoff team would be the Vikings. They went 9-8 last year with one of the worst quarterbacks probably the worst. Was JJ McCarthy the worst starting quarterback last year? I mean, you could make the argument. Maybe not worse than Geno Smith, but
it depends on how you look at it. Geno's numbers were horrific, but at the same time, McCarthy missed had two separate injuries last year.
Sure.
So that is something. But we'll see now. Now when the league year opens on the 11th, so less than a week away, this is now a new thing to look at.
Well, the point is they were able to have a winning record with one of the worst quarterback situations in the league, other than maybe the Jets with Justin Fields or the Raiders with Geno Smith, whatever. One of the top 5 worst quarterback situations, and they were able to have a winning record. Getting Kyler Murray substantially improves their quarterback situation. Like, the difference is it's a tremendous improvement. It's not a great situation, but it's a tremendous improvement. And in that scenario, yeah, I think they could be a playoff team. The biggest problem that the Vikings have is that they play in a very tough division. And I think that the Lions, the Packers, I think will remain about the same. Like the Packers, I think we kind of know, or at least have a good idea of what to expect year after year. But the Lions and the Bears are both probably going to have better seasons next year. I mean, the Bears are a young team with a young quarterback. I think the team will probably get better. And the Lions had a really down year last year. They'll probably improve with their new coordinators because, they lost their 2 coordinators. It was their first year, and I think that affected the team a lot, and I think they're going to be a lot better. So the Lions are behind the 8 ball. The Vikings are behind the 8 ball a little bit with Kyler Murray. But if they were able to win 9 games last year in that division, I mean, even if they win 9 or 10 games next year, they might not be a playoff team if they can only win 9 or 10 games. But I think they can at least come close. And you know what? With injuries that happen, and you never know how things will work out. So I think they at least have a good chance. With JJ McCarthy, I don't think they really have much of a chance. And let's not forget, not only was JJ McCarthy terrible with the Vikings when he was playing, now maybe it's too small of a sample size, the Vikings are the team that is known for like rescuing quarterbacks that were previously known as busts. And JJ McCarthy, like, it's one of the better quarterback situations in the NFL, and JJ McCarthy was horrible under those circumstances. Maybe like Kyler Murray could really find something. Maybe they can really catch something with Kyler Murray.
I'm thinking about it, and I'm going over all the teams in my head as you were just talking there, and the more I think about it, that does make the most sense. I mean, what I mean by that is the team that maybe is the closest to being in the playoffs with a questionable quarterback situation. Because I'm just trying to think of everybody else at the top of my head. Everybody else who needs like a quarterback right now is a team that's not expected to do much next year, like your Jets. By the way, would you take him on the Jets for 1 year?
Kyler Murray?
Yes.
I don't think that's such. First of all, the problem with Jet fans is that they hate every move that the Jets make without considering any of the alternatives. It's always like, oh, this is a bad move. And it's like, well, okay, they're not in a good situation. It's like, what are your alternatives? And it's only for a short period of time. The good thing about Kyler Murray is that he's not going to cost a lot of money and he's not a big risk. So we kind of know what we're getting a little bit. Now, the downsides with Kyler Murray is that I don't know, obviously his size. That's always a little bit of an issue, is his size. Also, I don't know how he'd play in not only a northern stadium, in a northern stadium, which is very tough to throw at, but also a northern division where, you play the Bills and the Patriots twice a year, and you play all your home games at MetLife Stadium. That's a little bit of a concern. That's, I think, harder than playing in Arizona and playing in a West Coast division with much milder weather and more quarterback-friendly stadiums. So I think that's a concern. But the Jets, like the standards for what a good move is for the Jets are kind of below, like in the dirt. So it's hard for me to be mad about it when there's really not much of a risk. It almost reminds me a little bit, and I know this is a weird reference, but when the Knicks signed Derrick Rose, it was like Derrick Rose, he was a little bit older at that point. He really wasn't the player he was before getting injured, but you know what? It was such a low risk. There was basically no risk involved for them. And it's a similar type of thing with Kyler Murray. I don't think there's much risk involved for the Jets signing Kyler Murray. So I'm kind of okay with it.
Yeah, because I think you need a transition guy on that team. I mean, the guys they had on the roster right now are just not the answer. I mean, Brady Cook is not the answer.
Yeah.
Fields and Tyrod Taylor, I think those days are long gone right now. That's why I was really a proponent of them going for like a Malik Willis. I don't think Malik Willis is an every week starter, but for the Jets where they need a transition, because they are actually really in a bad spot when it comes to the quarterback position, because yes, they're drafting high up there, but they're drafting in the top of the draft in what is not a quarterback heavy draft in 2026.
Yeah.
Now in 2027, it absolutely is. I mean, we've spoken about it. We're going to talk about it ad nauseum for the next 365 plus days about all the quarterbacks that could come out in 2027. I mean, it's absolutely.
You know what? You got to live in. We can't be talking about next year all the time. We don't know where the Jets will finish next year. We don't know. And also, like, I remember a lot of people were just going crazy about how Dante Moore decided to stay another year in college. I would be very hesitant to even take a chance on drafting Dante Moore, even if the Jets, even if he were coming out of college. I mean, he's 20 years old. He's only been in college for 3 seasons. I mean, I don't really think a quarterback like that is old enough or experienced enough to actually like lead a franchise, especially a dumpster fire of a franchise like the Jets. So like no matter what, the Jets were going to be in a bad situation unless they ended up getting the number 1 pick. And I just think that, look, maybe you can make the argument as a Jet fan that maybe we need to tank another year for the 2027 draft, which you can't go into a season with that attitude because you don't know where you're going to end up picking. And also, do you want to just go another year of unwatchable football from your team? Like I want to at least be respectable, and even mediocre teams in the NFL, they have somewhat of a chance to really make the playoffs, especially now with 7 teams from each conference. It's like you have some shot. You never know what might happen. Like if you have an AFC next year, like you had last year, all the mediocre teams in the AFC have a real chance. Like if everything falls the right way, if enough teams have enough injuries and things like that, you never know what might happen. You can't go into every year just completely hopeless and saying, we got to wait for next year. You don't know what you're getting next year. You don't know who's coming out. You don't know who's staying in college another year. You have no idea what you're getting. So you can't do it that way. You have to have some type of plan, some type of bridge plan where it's not a long-term solution. It's not a high-risk solution, but it's something. And that's something that I want. Like, I don't want to go into every year of like, oh, the Jets, they're just going to have to tank for the next best quarterback next year too. And you know what? That doesn't always work. You can't just plan things around that.
I agree. And also there's a couple of other factors, like you had mentioned. We talk about, right, I mean, we're talking about it in March of 2026 about all the quarterbacks that may come out in the 2027 draft. But what if one or two of those, or even three of those, suffer a very significant injury? Then that lowers their stock.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, that a bunch of the teams that are going to be wanting those QBs are going to, tank. So it's going to be a tanking league. So that league, that's not going to work. And then the third factor in all this is Aaron Glenn. You think Aaron Glenn, his second year, who's already been on the hot seat a lot of the time, you think he wants to go through another year like he had this past year? So
and also,
that's where,
and also
so
allegedly,
a big problem.
Also allegedly caught falling asleep at the combine.
And you know what though,
in fairness, I don't think he was asleep. I think he was just looking at his phone.
The angle. See, the problem is when you had a year like you had from him last year, when the team had a historically bad defense, when really the best part of him last year was when he was celebrating like crazy when the Jets scored against the Bucks in a game they still lost. I mean, every little detail of him is going to get magnified. So
yeah, I get that. I don't disagree. I also just saw the picture. I don't think he was asleep. I think he was looking at his phone. You could see that his eyes were down at the phone, and sometimes it can look like you're sleeping when that happens.
Oh, he clearly, yeah. It was like what happened with Francesa several years ago. Remember when Francesa was called? They said he fell asleep.
No, he actually did fall asleep. That's the difference. Like Francesa actually fell asleep. He fell over like this. It was like while he was live on the air, which is probably, other than falling asleep while driving, the last place you want to fall asleep, which like live on the air. And then the producer, like, I think said something in his ear.
Yeah, I think that's what ultimately like shook him out of it. But yeah,
and he perked up. But yes, that did no. But Francesa was actually asleep, and then never admitted that he fell asleep, and everybody made fun of him for it. But no, I don't think Aaron Glenn was actually asleep, and I think he was just looking at his phone. I wish he did fall asleep. I wish he fell asleep during the games. Maybe the Jets would have a shot at actually winning.
Well, speaking of which, though, as far as the Jets go, you want to talk about this?
Well, yeah. So the Jets franchise tag Breece Hall. Honestly, that's the topic that I put in. Although I want to talk about a little more than just Breece Hall. So we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw it. I think Aaron Glenn said that. Hold on a second. Let me see something for a second. He said that calling defensive plays. I think he said this last week. Calling defensive plays is my superpower. When you're Aaron Glenn and you had the season like you had last year, you should not be calling anything your superpower. Prove to me that you have a superpower. Don't call anything a superpower, because you know what? It didn't really work very well last year when you say calling defensive plays is your superpower. The other thing is, as a head coach, you have far more responsibilities than just calling defensive plays. If he had said something like, my strong suit is calling defensive plays, that's fine, because, that's something you're better at than others. Okay. Calling something a superpower when the Jets defense, his side of the ball last year was terrible, not as bad as the offense, but was terrible. You have no right to be calling that a superpower. When you're Aaron Glenn, this to me is just laughable.
Well, why didn't you stay defensive coordinator then?
Exactly.
And his last year in Detroit as a defensive coordinator, he wasn't great. He wasn't great at that either. The Lions defense the last year that he was there wasn't great.
No, I mean, in fairness, I think a lot of that was because of injuries, but no, it wasn't that great. And the thing is that that's also been an issue that the Jets have had with previous head coaches. It's been that they thought that defensive play calling was their superpower, and they forgot how to actually be a head coach. That was the problem with Robert Saleh. I mean, you could even argue it was an issue with Todd Bowles and Rex Ryan. It's it's been an issue with all the head coaches the Jets have had in the past 15 years, almost 20 years now, other than Adam Gase. Because the Jets always hire defensive head coaches, and some of them aren't. I mean, they're so defensive oriented that they're just unable to actually be a head coach. But no, there is no evidence at all that Aaron Glenn is this defensive genius. Like, it's completely made up.
Well, the problem is too, if you're let me put my defensive genius hat on for just a second here. The two things that make a great defense in the NFL are getting to the quarterback, which the Jets have not been able to get a pass rush for. I mean, the last consistent pass rusher the Jets had was John Abraham, and that was over 20 years ago. Even Rex Ryan, the 2 years that he took the Jets to the AFC Championship, he should know as a defensive coordinator, getting to the quarterback is one of the big things that make you a legitimate defense. And the Jets haven't had a pass rusher since John Abraham. That was over 20 years ago. And the second thing that makes you a great defense is takeaways. And how many takeaways did the Jets have last year?
Zero.
So the two things that make you a defensive genius and make you a great defensive team, the Jets didn't do last year and haven't done in forever.
Yeah. And how much I think Aaron Glenn has a lot of nerve claiming that defensive play calling is a superpower when, based on what happened last year, there was no evidence that he had any superpowers other than dancing on the sidelines before the game ends. Like, that's the only thing he actually did well. So if anything, it's just, there's no, even if you were to just look at Aaron Glenn's first year on the Jets and just look at everything that happened, you wouldn't draw the conclusion, oh, he's a defensive head coach. You would draw the conclusion he doesn't know what he's doing. Like, that would be the conclusion that you draw. It's just that it's not that the defense was good and the offense was bad. They were both bad. The offense was just worse. That doesn't prove that he knows what he's doing on defense. It proves that he really doesn't know what he's doing on offense.
And you know what? You're only going to have so long to figure that out. I mean, if you have another year like that this upcoming year, I mean, there's no guarantee he'll make it after this year. And I know we'll have to go down this road again with him. But, I mean, everybody wants to point to Dan Campbell because of the whole Lions thing, what Dan Campbell's first year was like. Dan Campbell at least had moments in that year that the Lions were horrific. I mean, there was at least some promise there. There's no promise on this Jets team. I mean, again, when your leading receiver was Garrett Wilson and he missed how many games last year and had how many yards last year?
Yeah.
I mean, and the Jets schedules, the one thing also is the Jets schedule next year on paper, at least as of right now, is not favorable. And I only know that because it's the same thing we would talk about with the Patriots, that the schedule is a challenge next year. And why it's very likely the Pats won't have a 14-win season next year. But
the reason the biggest reason the Packers had such a favorable schedule is because they were the last place team the year before, and that's how scheduling in the NFL works. They played a last place schedule, and ended up becoming a first place team. And
the other thing too with that, not to get off topic, is I think the Bills are going to try and bounce back because they still do have Josh Allen on that team. They're not rebuilding; they're restructuring that team. So that's the other thing you have to look at. But that's why we'll see what they do here. I mean, Breece Hall, as far as the franchise tag goes, I mean, where else are we going to go at for running back with them? They're not going to. Yeah. I mean, they're not going to draft Jeremiah Love because he's not going to go that's where the Jets are picking. So, I mean, you go out on the market. I mean,
I'm just worried, and this is not even just as a Jet fan, but just as a football fan. Also as a Jet fan, but a little bit as a football fan too. I'm worried that Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall are going to go in a similar direction as, say, somebody like Larry Fitzgerald or Saquon Barkley, just being on bad teams for so much of their careers. Although Larry Fitzgerald at least played in a Super Bowl, but all right, maybe somebody like Calvin Megatron or something like that when he was on the Lions for so many years. And I just don't want to see good players' careers wasted on dysfunctional franchises like the Jets. And that's a little bit of a concern for me because the way I see it is that, look, I love Breece Hall. I love Garrett Wilson. I think they're both sensational players, and they're both still young. But I am worried that we're not like, sure, we have these great players, but we have nothing to show for them. And if we're winning 3 games next year, I mean, I'm not saying that's guaranteed to happen, but if that does, if we have a similar season, like what is even the point of having those guys if you're only going to win 3 games? What are you even paying for? Like that's the problem. And I think Breece Hall's a very good player. I think it was the right move to franchise tag him. I have no problem with it. I'm just worried that the thing with having good running backs and good receivers, or just generally good position players in general in football outside of quarterbacks, is that you don't get any return on your investment if the rest of the team sucks. It's not like in basketball where you get like a really good player or even a really good role player where that investment really works or probably will work. In football, it's totally different. If you have a really good running back, really good receiver, but everything else sucks, you don't have a good head coach, your offensive line's terrible, everything else is terrible, that's not really doing you any good. So that's just an issue I have. It's the reason the Jets traded Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner at the deadline last year, because they weren't getting anything for them. And I'm just worried it might go the same way with Breece and with Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson had a great rookie year, and then the problem is they tried to follow that up. When they got Rodgers, and Rodgers wanted his own guys, that hurt his growth and his development. And then last year he gets hurt, which doesn't help either. And also, he doesn't have anybody capable of throwing him the football.
Yeah,
your second leading guy last year was Breece Hall, receiving wise. They had nothing last year, whether that was Fields or whether it was whoever was a QB. I mean, Tyrod Taylor, I think those backup days are long gone. And then Brady Cook. I mean, my God. I mean, Brady Cook wouldn't be a third string quarterback on 20 other teams right now.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with Aaron Rodgers. It's like, I think that Garrett Wilson's growth would have been stunted a lot more if they hadn't had Aaron Rodgers, because they would have just had a really incompetent quarterback in all likelihood that wouldn't have been able to get him the ball. That's the problem with wide receivers, is that their success is so heavily dependent on another position.
Well, yeah, but if they got any other quarterback but Aaron Rodgers, I think it would have been fine. But the problem is you get Rodgers, and then Rodgers brings in his own guys. I mean, Woody Johnson basically handed the keys off to Rodgers and told him, all right, you come here and you have your guys. I mean, they brought in Randall Cobb. They brought in Alan Lazard. Alan Lazard is a waste of a roster spot.
He's terrible.
He was fine for Rodgers, but he also wouldn't find like a third string wide receiver on a playoff team. Him right now in the Jets, when Rodgers left, while he's still on the roster, he's a waste of a roster spot.
Yeah.
So when Rodgers brings in his guys, he wants his guys. And clearly, Garrett Wilson was not a Rodgers guy.
I was fine with bringing in some of his guys. Like, I'm okay with players having some sway in terms of player, roster decisions. I'm okay with it on some level. But the Jets didn't have to basically hand the entire franchise over to Aaron Rodgers and tell him, and basically just Aaron Rodgers says jump and they say how high. Like that is just so ridiculous.
They brought in his OC. So Woody was desperate. He brought in his OC for Pete's sake.
Yeah, and Woody was desperate, and he also, Woody is just. This year he also said, maybe if we had a quarterback who could actually throw the ball. He said that publicly.
Woody. Whose fault is that?
Right.
It's funny. Him and Jerry Jones, all they do is talk, and they're two of the biggest, and they're the two reasons why their respective franchises haven't done jack in the last 30 years.
I think Jerry Jones is a far better owner than Woody Johnson.
But the difference though, the problem with Jerry Jones is that he's the owner and the GM. He can't be both. Yeah. He is a great business owner. He is a horrible football owner and a horrible football GM.
You're right.
He's horrible. I don't want and ESPN's morning shows, which just love him to death, and it's so annoying. There are 32 teams in the NFL where on all morning shows, those two morning shows are talking about are the Dallas Cowboys and basically telling the Cowboys how to run their team. There's clear bias in that regard. And I'm sorry, the Cowboys have been the most mid team in the NFL in the 21st century. I mean, it's.
I get that, but I'd rather have a mid team than the Jets, who are
well,
just
what you've been. Well, wait a second though. The Jets at least made 2 AFC championships in the 21st century. The Cowboys haven't come close to that since their Super Bowl in the 90s.
Well, the Jets made 2 AFC championships. You're right, but are also on a 14, going on 15-year playoff.
Look, now. They are clearly. I mean, it doesn't have to be documented. I mean, they have the worst stretch by a country mile.
Look, Jet fans have it much worse than Cowboy fans do. At least Cowboy fans every year have something to root for. They at least have some hope. There's some hope that they can at least be a playoff team. The Jets, by Halloween, we're just like, yeah, we're checked out this season.
Yeah, let me tell you that Cowboy roster right now. If I'm a Cowboy fan, I'd be furious over because they're going down the same road they did last year with Micah Parsons, and Jerry trades him away like it's nothing, thinking that he can get an edge, that edge rushers grow on trees. Which newsflash, they do not. And players like George Pickens don't grow on trees. I'm sorry. I mean, you can go out there and get wide receivers, but not top wide receivers like Pickens. So, but I mean, the Jets did this with Breece Hall. I mean, they also traded away Jermaine Johnson. So there's another, by the way, high draft pick that they had, which actually I believe wasn't he the guy that they actually traded back to the first round to get a couple of years ago, which actually looked like a pretty good move.
Jermaine Johnson, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I like this move for the Jets, actually. They traded him for some guy from the Titans. By the way, the Titans are going to be like the ultimate former New York player and coach. With Robert Saleh as the defensive coordinator and as the head coach. And Brian Dable as the offensive coordinator.
Which I actually like, though.
Yeah. No,
I think it works. I think Dable's now Saleh, I think, deserves another shot at a head coach. I mean, the way things are looking at more with the Jets, maybe he wasn't such a bad head coach after all.
I agree. I don't think Robert Saleh. I can't. You know what? No sports opinion that I've had has changed quite like the way I view former Jets head coaches. At the time, I didn't like Saleh because I thought he wasn't a good head coach, but I really don't think he was all that bad. And you know what? When the Jets fired him, they fired the most competent member of their staff, and the team just turned to shit. Yeah. And if Robert Saleh really was so bad, why did the team just nosedive without him? He couldn't have been that bad if the team got so much worse. I mean, whenever bad coaches are fired, even on bad teams, and you see this a lot in college, like the teams improve. Like you see how much better the team is without their head coach after they get fired. When things like that happen, it's like a new beginning. That didn't happen with the Jets. They got substantially worse. And I think it said a lot about Robert Saleh. It's a similar thing with Bowles. I mean, sure, Bowles made some questionable punting calls. He coached a little too conservatively, but overall, he really wasn't all that bad of a coach. And I really feel that way about most former Jets head coaches. I don't think most of them were really all that bad. I think Aaron Glenn is terrible, and maybe I'm making the same mistake. But, I mean, the difference is that Aaron Glenn, I think there are signs with Aaron Glenn. I can't guarantee I know how his tenure with the Jets is going to go. But with Aaron Glenn, I think there's some clear, concrete signs that he's uniquely awful. Like, especially with the way he's managed offensive play calls in some of these games. And as much as you can blame the offensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn's in charge of the offensive coordinator. And just based on how everything went this year, I have no reason to believe that Aaron Glenn is capable of being a head coach. But overall, I'd say I like this move for the Jets trading Jermaine Johnson. They did it for two reasons. One was to switch to, from what I read, that they want to switch to a 3-4 defense and have a better interior, like, rush defense.
Yeah. And also,
that's what I read. I guess that makes a certain amount of sense. And the other reason was cap space, which I think is actually the best reason, I would say, to make this move, is to just clear cap space, because there's no reason why the Jets need to be spending money on Jermaine Johnson when they were one of the worst defenses in the league last year. What are you even getting for him? So, and they got the nose tackle T'Vondre Sweat. I've never heard of this guy. He's 6'4", 366 pounds. So I'm sure he's noticeable on public transit.
Yeah, I'm 6'4" and I'm 210, so he's got 150 on me. But yeah, but it also shows where they were saying that now it looks like the Jets may go for an edge rusher at the draft, maybe even with that first round pick that they've got. I mean, a lot of the talk has been possibly that we could be looking at 4 straight Ohio State guys after Mendoza gets drafted number 1 by the Raiders in the draft in April. So
yeah, Arvell.
Yeah. Yeah, Arvell. They were talking about Reese, I think is his name.
Yeah, Arvell Reese.
I know, like from the Giants side, we're picking at 5, and they're talking possibly about Sonny Styles being there at 5. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation with the Giants, not to turn to me, but that's what it looks like they may be doing with this trade.
Another name that is being floated around is Ruben Bain from the defensive tackle from Miami.
Yes, that is true. And he had a good combine. You know, that's the thing, too. We see with the combine has, you know, when you look at some players who have a standout combine, that elevates their draft stock, too. So that could be what's in work here with the Jets and with a few teams here, especially the top picks in the draft in April.
Yeah, so I think the move is good. I don't know much about Devondre Sweat. I know he was a Texas guy.
Yes,
but
correct.
Yeah, I don't know too much about him. I mean, nose tackles are always like freakishly.
It is strange though that you don't usually see player for player trades in the NFL.
You don't, especially on the same side of the ball. You don't see that.
Yeah, that, and then also just player for player. Sometimes you'll see player for player in picks, or player for picks, but it's very rare that you get a 1-for-1 like we saw.
Yeah, you never really get a 1-for-1 deal. Yeah, you rarely ever really see that. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, because in every other circumstance, it's like if there's a player-for-player trade, it also includes picks, and also the 2 players are they're not equal. Like, they're wildly uneven, so you might trade 1 player for, like, 3 players and then draft picks or whatever. That's usually how it works.
When the Jets traded Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner in those 2 trades, they did get a player and picks back in those. So that's what I'm saying, that it's very rare to get a straight-up 1-for-1 here in football.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing that look, if Aaron Glenn and we were talking about tanking before, and I think the biggest reason, I mean, it's an interesting conversation with like tanking in the NBA and all of that, but in football, the reason tanking never happens is because the players and the coaches, I feel like, especially on bad teams, are always fighting for something, and there's never really much of an incentive to tank because tanking in football, it can work, but it doesn't work as well. Like the Jets, even if the fans want the Jets to tank, they're not going to tank. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, the players would never do that.
The players would never do that, and the coaches would never do that because the coaches are fighting for their job. Like, even if the Jets get the number 1 pick next year, Aaron Glenn is probably not keeping his job. And not only does he not keep his job, but it severely hurts his reputation for future jobs. The only good thing is that he has 3 more years left on his contract that they have to pay. But like, Aaron Glenn is absolutely not going to want to tank the season. So, everybody talking about, for all the Jet fans that root for tanking, and I understand it, that's not what the team is going to try to do. So just be more realistic.
Well, I can tell you that from my side. I'm a Giants fan. Now, Giant fans wanted to tank the last 2 years, and they ended up in one game scoring 45 points 2 years ago against the Colts, and then they did what they did against the I'm trying to remember the Raiders and the Cowboys in the year last year. It's just not realistic. I mean,
yeah,
those players, and also when you have talent on the roster too. I mean, it's very hard to tell that kind of talented roster. And I say talented roster because they only won 4 games, but the talented roster that won that, you can tell those players, don't compete or anything like that. They're not going to do that. I mean, they have too much on the line to do that. So,
do you know? So I'm looking at the over/under for wins on DraftKings for each team.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I read that wrong. Do you know what it is for the Jets?
I would say, is it? Let me ask you that. Let me answer that by asking you a question. Is it the lowest of the 32 teams?
No.
Okay, I would say it's something about like 5.5.
You're exactly right. Yeah. Although it's uneven odds, it's like plus 105. Over under is 5.5. and minus 125 for under, so it's heavily tilted towards the under.
I thought I might have saw it because I remember I saw something that the Giants are what, 7.5?
Yes, that's. Wait, let me double check. On DraftKings, yeah, it's 7.5. But again, also uneven odds, plus 110 for the over and minus 130 for the under.
Yeah, and that kind of makes sense. And that kind of makes sense because they still have to do. I mean, I wonder if those numbers will change once you get your draft guys and free agency starts.
Are the schedules even out yet?
Well, no, the schedule. So the schedule, we know the opponents, but the schedule doesn't come out until about the second week in May.
We know the opponents. Okay,
we know the opponents, but we don't know the schedule. We know some international games right now, but again, we still have free agency that opens up next week, the draft at the end of April, and then the schedule release, which is usually the second Wednesday or Thursday in May.
Yeah. So they're playing. Wait, the Jets. I haven't looked at who they're playing next year, so I can't pick an over or under. Although I'd probably go.
Well, I wouldn't do it right now because we don't know about free agency and we don't know
right
draft. I think, and maybe the number might fluctuate after that, but I think it almost makes more sense to wait to see what happens there before you make that decision.
The interesting thing is that. So I'm looking at all the over under for wins, and it looks like the Cardinals actually have the lowest win total at 4.5.
Yeah, I mean, now
but they still have. That's interesting to me because they still have Jacoby Brissett, and they really weren't all that bad with Jacoby Brissett last year.
I want to see, and that's something we didn't talk about with Kyler, is where do the Cardinals go for QB now? They've got a few wide receivers. They have one of the better tight ends in the league in McBride. I mean, their offense is not bad. If they had a capable quarterback, that's in at least a 500 team. And I know that's in a very tough division, and that's the biggest problem they have too. Not only is the quarterback, but they've got three great teams, including the Super Bowl champions in that same division.
Yeah. No, that's a real.
And maybe the Seahawks and the Niners take a little bit of a hit because the Seahawks lost Kubiak and the Niners lost Saleh, and coordinators are just as important as valuable players. And we don't know right now as we're doing this if the Seahawks are going to be able to keep Kenneth Walker. So if you don't have your OC,
certainly for a team like the Niners.
Well, think about this too. The defending Super Bowl champions. How do teams repeat? It's this. You have the same coordinators and most of your key players. There's a possibility that the Seahawks are going to lose their OC and the MVP of Super Bowl 60.
Yeah,
I mean it's still a great team. I mean they've got a capable running back tandem there still too with Charbonnet and others. But I mean those are two big pieces of your Super Bowl team that are going to be gone possibly.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the thing with the Niners is that they always get bit with the injury bug. Really weird how they suffer from injuries, it seems like, more than any other team.
Key players, exactly, yes.
But or even non-key players, it seems to happen a lot, where their depth against the Seahawks, it was just so bad that
the backups were even starting to drop too.
Right. Really, yeah, so that's always an issue with the Niners. But even if all that happens, the Cardinals still have a very uphill climb.
Clearly, yes.
And they won 3 games last year. So,
but they lost a lot of close games.
They lost a lot of close games, and they beat and they won a couple of games against they had a few fairly decent wins.
Yeah.
So they were, I think they were a good 3-14, but that's still 3-14.
Yeah.
We have to talk about the Colts. They transition tag Daniel Jones, which is just like a non-exclusive franchise tag, except it's less, basically.
So, we talk about, and the big theme of this episode has been quarterbacks. This is a very fascinating one to me because also with this is the Colts talking about looking into trading Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
So that would mean you could be looking, I mean, the only guys you still have on your roster then would be Riley Leonard, who did all right in a very short sample size, but I mean, what is he? So, and you have Jones now, who is coming off that Achilles injury that he suffered late in the year. Now, he's still a pretty young guy, so it's not like a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers who suffered, but although his Achilles injury was in week 1, Jones suffered his really late. But I think when you look at the Colts team, I think the Colts need to do everything possible to keep Jones.
Yeah.
Because Daniel Jones to me is like Sam Darnold. And what I mean by that is he is a system quarterback. And and the Colts were a great system for him. The offensive line, for the most part, played great last year while he was in there. He's got a very solid running game with Jonathan Taylor. He's got good receivers. The tight end, who was a great rookie in Warren. So they have players on that team. So it's just going to be fascinating to see. I don't know if Jones fits on many rosters, though. This is the same thing that we've been talking about with a lot with teams. And a lot of these teams that are really good, again, teams that we think are playoff teams, for the most part, have their quarterback in place.
Yeah. I think that's true. Yes. Most of them have a quarterback in place. There's a few teams that really aren't good where maybe if you just change the quarterback, maybe they have a shot. Like I said, the Vikings, I think, are an example of that. But I agree. I think Daniel Jones is a perfect fit for the Colts. And I think people are starting to forget how good they were, how hot of a team they were before Daniel Jones got injured. In like the first half of the season, they were arguably the best team in the NFL for a little bit of time with Daniel Jones. Now, in terms of, it is interesting how Daniel Jones's reputation changed so quickly, because remember when the Colts said that they were going to start Daniel Jones over Anthony Richardson, and people were like freaking out. How could you start Daniel Jones? And it's like, do you guys not remember how bad Anthony Richardson was with the Colts? I mean, he was so bad he took himself out of a game, and he literally took himself out of a game. Like, that's how bad Anthony Richardson was. He rarely even completed more than 50% of his passes. The only saving grace for Anthony Richardson, honestly, is that he's still very young. He entered the league very young, probably too young, probably should have stayed in college a little longer. And
he had very little experience.
And he was a good college quarterback, but he was very inconsistent. He was an inconsistent college quarterback, and he went into the NFL as an inconsistent college quarterback. It probably wasn't wise. He probably should have stayed in college a little longer. And I think that the Colts looking to trade Anthony Richardson is smart. The only problem is, what value does Anthony Richardson have?
Now see, I think Richardson could go to a good team and be a backup and learn. That I think it's a little bit different with him. By the way, Richardson, how did his stock rise? The combine.
Yeah.
Where was the combine? Indy. I remember quite well he had a great combine, and his stock exploded that year that he got drafted. So there's that. I think with Richardson, it's different than like the Malik Willises or the Tua Tagovailoas and the Kyler Murrays of the world, in that he like you said, he's still very young. I think a team that actually is kind of a playoff team could take him as a backup option.
Yeah,
maybe like, I'm just trying to think, like the Commanders, the Eagles. Although I'll tell you right now, and one of my predictions, I would say, I think Tua Tagovailoa is going to go to the Eagles.
You think he's going to go as a backup?
As a backup to Jalen Hurts.
I think that would be really interesting to see, because like the Eagles are a really good system for quarterback. Like, I think Jalen Hurts is a little bit like Daniel Jones or Sam Darnold in the sense that they're very system oriented. Although I think Darnold is a little bit less of a system quarterback than people say he is. I think he has some real skill. But that would be really interesting to see, because I think Tua, you can argue, is a little bit of a system quarterback too. I mean, obviously there's a lot of limitations in his skill set, namely his accuracy and also just his ability, like the fact that he gets hurt all the time, which was an issue going back to his college days.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting question, because is it possible that the Miami Dolphins system really just wasn't very good for him? Like, maybe he was asked to do too much under that system. And maybe
I think he was.
I mean, be so bad.
That defense was awful down there in Miami. I mean, he had guys like Waddle and Tyreek Hill there, and he was still putting up some great numbers. It was just his health was really bad. But I think he's still got a spot on some teams as a backup, or maybe if you want to start, maybe like Arizona could be a starting spot for him even. possibly too. I mean, it'd be a similar
Yep.
thing, minimal money to go to Arizona. I mean, that's the thing. He's got a lot of money that's going to get owed to him. So he could be somebody that goes for like a minimum contract, again, like the Russell Wilsons that we were talking about. But I think the Colts need to do everything possible to keep Jones, because the 1 year that Jones took the Giants to the playoffs back in 2022 was similar to the kind of team that he had with the Colts last year. And again, the offensive line had played well. Jones had Saquon Barkley. He had receivers with this Giants team that he took to the playoffs, and he kind of had that there. Now, what ultimately hurt the Colts and what began their downturn from 8-2 to not making the playoffs was the games before he got hurt. He had started to take a lot of sacks. He had turned the ball over.
Right.
He had kind of morphed back into what he was like the last couple of years with the Giants. But he showed the one thing Jones showed last year that amazed me really was how he handled pressure. Like there were times that he was under pressure last year, and he did great. That was one thing he couldn't do with the Giants that he did with the Colts, was how he was able to handle pressure. So I think he showed that the Colts do work for him, and I think they do need to do everything possible to keep him, because I think he's a true fit in that team. I don't know how many other teams he fits in with.
No, I think Daniel
I don't think
Jones,
a lot of teams are going to spend that kind of money. That's like $33 million or so for him.
The problem with Daniel Jones is that I feel like he has to be in like the perfect situation. He has to be in a lot of, he's got to have really great weapons behind him, a really good coaching staff. He has to have like a lot of things going for him for him to be a good fit. Whereas he's not the type of quarterback that, like Josh Allen on the Bills. The Bills are only good because of Josh Allen. The Ravens are only good because of Lamar Jackson. Those are otherwise not good teams. Daniel Jones is nothing like that as a quarterback. So I think that he's a perfect fit for the Colts, and I think they're going to do everything they can to keep him. I think they should trade Anthony Richardson and see what value they can get for him. The only value he has is that he's young. That's it. His reputation was terrible. I also thought it was a really bad look when his agent complained that he wasn't named the starter last season. I think that's embarrassing. Agents should never do that. It just is not good for his reputation. But that's maybe that is an interesting point you brought up though with Tua, that maybe he could go with the Cardinals, and maybe that would look. I don't know. That's interesting. I think.
Well, think about this.
It's a risk move for the Cardinals.
But if you look at the Cardinals have right now 2 wide receivers you can count on and a great tight end. Mm-hmm. When Tua was with the Dolphins, he had 2 very solid wide receivers and had decent tight end play.
Yeah.
I mean, Trey McBride almost could be a number 1 receiver, how he is. I mean, I knew that because I had him in fantasy last year, and he gave me unbelievable numbers last year. So,
yeah.
And he had started to get some touchdowns, which is one thing he never really did in his beginning of his career. But I mean, now he's getting a touchdown almost every week with that team. So that's where I can see that's the quarterback position now. All of a sudden, with the news that we've gotten this week now, has now made this offseason one to watch, because I think we have a lot of guys that can help the transition of QB for a lot of teams, and then we've got some that could still start or on others, or at least be a capable backup.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think my gut tells me that Jones is going to go back to the Colts, though. Because the transition tag, that's a top 10 salary. I don't know if there are teams that need a quarterback are going to pay top 10 salary for Daniel Jones.
No, I don't think. Well, wait, actually, I do have an idea. What if the Vikings did it?
I was going to say, did the Vikings go back to him and cut their losses?
Given their options right now, do you think they'd be kind of crazy not to? I mean, that's like you were talking about fit. That's the only other team that I think Daniel Jones really has a good fit in. I mean, they went 9-8 last year with JJ McCarthy, and it's hard to believe they were able to have a winning record. But
Kevin O'Connell, yep.
I mean, they were foolish to let him go in the first place. I mean, I guess that's possible.
One of the things, though, when you play in the AFC South is you play 2, 4. You play 6 games. I'm trying to wait. Did I do that right? Let's see. Colts, Jaguars, Texans, and what's the other team I'm missing?
Colts, Jaguars, Texans, Titans.
Okay, so at least 4 of those games are indoors. You don't have to deal with elements.
And also, And also what? And none of them are in Jacksonville. They play outdoors, right?
Yes, and that's
Okay.
that one is pretty good.
And that's mild weather.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, just we'll see.
So yeah, so it's gonna. Well, the Vikings do play in a dome, but yes, it is harder when you have to play in northern. You have to go to Green Bay, and you got to go to Chicago. And the Lions, they also play in a dome, but that's at least 2 games right there where you're.
That's true. That's another situation there too. Yep.
But it's actually not that much different because the Lions and Vikings both play in domes. So it's kind of, I guess it depends on who else you're playing. But yeah, I mean, you don't have to play as, you're more likely to play in colder stadiums if you play in the NFC North. Can we talk about Chad Baker-Mazara? He was dismissed from USC. For what I don't understand about college sports is that whenever players are dismissed or kicked out, they never give you like a clear reason for it. It's just like they said it was a whole bunch of reasons. And I believe that to be true. I don't think they're lying about it, but it is a little weird that constantly happens. That they're just like when they say players get like a player got dismissed for violating team rules. That's like a headline that says somebody was arrested for breaking the law. Like, yeah, no shit.
Well, I was going to say, so when I first heard this, usually if you're dismissed or something, it's one major thing, or it's either a repeat of a minor, or it stems from multiple occurrences. And with Mazara, he had left the court with an apparent injury against Nebraska, and then after the game, he sat near an injured teammate, and that led to speculation. But it says that the decision to dismiss Baker-Mazara was not based on a single incident, but rather a culmination of various issues, including academic performance and personal conduct. See, and that's what I was just saying. This felt like it had to be multiple things. Unless it's one major, usually a minor incident, maybe you don't play for a game. I think we've seen this in college football. When there's an incident involving a player, they usually get suspended for the first half of the game.
They do that a lot in football.
But that's what I'm thinking. If this was a minor thing, maybe we would have read or heard that he would have been suspended for a game, or maybe because you don't see players in college basketball get suspended for a half of the game. It's usually for one game. But but this felt like it had to be several things. And reading here, it was multiple things. Of course, when you think of USC now you wonder about what their chances are going to be in the tournament without him. But that's not really important here. But this really was crazy. It was a lot. He's their second leading scorer, and it felt like it came out of nowhere. But USC saying that it came from multiple instances, I think that kind of makes sense, because it would take something like that to dismiss a player, especially this late in the year. That's another thing too. The timing of this too is another thing to look at. And it's not like it was a week or two into the season, or let's say this was December or January. This is a week before the conference championships, 2 weeks before the NCAA tournament starts, and USC was right on the cusp of making it.
Yeah, they're one of the more notable bubble teams, and every game really counts for them right now. So something had to have happened for them to just dismiss him from the team at this point. Apparently it's all personal, because according to the LA Times, it's for it had a lot to do with personal conduct, and it seems like it was just multiple disciplinary issues throughout the season involving personal conduct. We don't really know what personal conduct means. It's just all that means is things that he wasn't supposed to do. But
you could think of 20 instances, 20 things like that. We don't know specifically. We may not know. Yeah, and exactly. But the fact that it was that happened multiple times is ultimately the reason why this has happened. I mean, it's sure if it happened one time, like I said, maybe does he miss a game? But these schools realize that. The other thing too is that if there were multiple instances and he's playing through this, then this program has to answer questions of why is he still on the team with multiple instances, and you're doing this when your focus is trying to make the tournament in 2 weeks, and you're on, like you said, you're a bubble team right now. But so we'll see. This was crazy. I'm sure in the coming days we'll learn more, maybe, about what happened, or this might be something we may not find out till the end of their season. But
I
again,
guess
the key thing, multiple things.
You know who I'd like to find out about this is Pablo Torre. I mean, he's the guy. He finds out about everything. It would be nice if he found this out.
Pablo finds out. Yes.
So, I mean, I guess that's possible. He could do some digging and figure out what happened. Yeah, it seems like there may have been some academic violations or a lot of. You just don't see this type of thing happen very often. But I'm sure he had multiple warnings, and he was making some dumb decisions.
I think the key word in what we're talking about in this story is multiple.
Yeah,
not single, but multiple.
And how often do players get dismissed for a single thing? Really, like, it happens sometimes, but it doesn't happen often.
It doesn't, but it would have to be something like something major, like something criminal, or like domestic violence or something.
And
like
even
that.
when that happens, players aren't always dismissed. Like,
no, not as much as they should. You're right.
Like,
that's another. That's another reason why this is kind of a big deal. Not only because of how important he is to the USC basketball team, but the fact that it rarely does happen.
I mean, I'm not convinced he did anything criminal, because if he did,
it doesn't say it was criminal. It almost could have been more like with just his academic stuff more than anything else. That's what
I think it was more than that, though. I think it had more to do with conduct than I think it had a lot to. It was probably a little bit of both, but it probably had more to do
with the program and the school.
Yes,
internally with the school and the program, that can be enough. I mean, that's the thing and it doesn't get documented enough. And CBS does a really good job in this in terms of college football. Is they highlight some of the players and they highlight their academic, like their GPA and their major. And that's something that's not talked about enough when it comes to these kids, because in this day and age of NIL and stuff, we're talking more about the athlete than the student. Again, I'll echo this till I'm blue in the face. These kids, they are students first and athletes second. Unfortunately, with NIL now, they're being treated the other way around.
I would argue it was already like that before NIL. At some schools.
I think more though, it's more since NIL that's becoming like this.
Yeah, I think it's not so much an NIL thing though. I think it really just depends on the school, and some schools have higher standards than others. Like at Kentucky, you probably have to know how to read. Like, it's probably a lot easier. Like,
watch an Ivy League game in those gyms. That's
schools don't typically have high academic standards.
Well, if you remember when CBS had the SEC, those were the games they were really focusing on. I mean, you don't need to watch like the Ivy League games to know how that they're definitely among the best in the nation with GPA and stuff. But that's the thing. And then,
I mean, I will say though, a lot of now that when players are staying in school longer, I think academics matter a lot. When players do the one and done with going to college for 1 year and then leave, their academics don't matter as much to their future, at least, than if you're staying for a long time. Because look, I went to college and you went to college, and I'm sure you remember, or at least it was like this for me. I can't speak for everybody, but my freshman year of college, I learned some of the dumbest, most useless in the world. It was like another year of high school. It was like really like a huge waste for me. Not a waste, but like
that's why, and not to get off topic, but if I ever could give any advice to people going to college, take college credits in high school. I did that, and it helped a lot.
Yeah, it's a good idea. As long as you're not too overwhelmed in high school. But yes, that was obviously that was a big thing for me. It was just like, why am I learning all of this? In which also is a totally different discussion, but the one and done rule in basketball was always stupid. There should never be a one and done rule. It's a waste. But either way, that's our show this week. We'll be back next week with another edition of Moving the Goalposts. See you guys then.
See you next week.